So today we're going to continue talking about some of the things that we were talking about on Monday and get into a little bit more detail on some of them. And then I'm going to give you an exercise to do together. But before I get into all of that, I need to just let you know that on Moodle, on the Moodle site for this course, there is a questionnaire. It's actually called a quiz on Moodle. And I'm going to ask you to please complete it by next Wednesday. The syllabus has recorded on there that you need to do this. If you have trouble finding the Moodle quiz, please email me and I will tell you where to find it. Okay, so on Monday, I reviewed the basic tasks of comparative politics: description, including data collection, categorization and measurement; comparison, including the need to define concepts and criteria; and explanation. So today, what I want to do is talk just a little bit more about how these tasks fit into political science as a discipline. So to begin with, I want to ask you to pull out a piece of paper and a pencil, or if you're using your laptop, use your laptop, and take a minute to write down some answers to this question. Why do people study politics? Okay, so what'd you come up with? Normally, I would actually ask you to tell me what you came up with, but obviously this time it's not going to work quite that way. So let me just imagine what you might have come up with as answers to the question, why do people study politics, right? Well, one reason people study politics is because they want to understand what's going on in the world. Another reason is that they might want to understand why things happen in the political realm. They might also want to anticipate what might happen in the future. Or they might be looking for guidance as to how to get a certain result, right? What they should do in order to get the result that they want. And finally, they might be trying to figure out what it is that they should want, right? What the desired result is. And this last point really puts the spotlight on a key division within the discipline of political science that we talked about last time. The division between a branch of political science that looks at values and looks for guidance as to how politics should be organized, and the branch of political science that looks at facts and observations of the way things actually are. And that is the division of political science into the branches of normative philosophy, philosophy consisting of arguments about what should be in politics, and empirical political science that looks mainly at matters of fact. So empirically based political science doesn't make arguments about what should be. It makes arguments about what is through a process of scientific observation, aka data collection. And remember that data is not just numbers. Sometimes people think of data as a spreadsheet of numbers. But any systematic information, any information that you collect in a systematic way using standards and consistent strategies for information collection can be data. So empirically based political science makes arguments about what is through this process of scientific observation or data collection with human communities as the target. And that's what differentiates the social sciences from the natural sciences, right? The social sciences look at human communities and human individuals. So social sciences include economics, political science, anthropology, sociology, psychology, all of which have as their research subject individual human beings and groups of human beings, so social communities. All right, so empirical research about politics is concerned, Shively tells us, with expanding our knowledge of what happens in politics and of why it happens as it does, right? So what happens is description, why it happens is explanation. It analyzes facts to develop new political theories or to change or confirm old ones. And that brings us to another topic I wanted to introduce today, which is the whole idea of theory in social science. And here are three definitions of theory in social science. The first one comes from your textbook: an integrated set of hypotheses, assumptions, and facts that add up to an explanation, so that explain something. And we will talk about all of these, and I'll give you a chance to ask questions about them as we go through the semester. But for now, try to think about how politics might usefully yield hypotheses, assumptions, and facts adding up to explanation. Another definition, again from Shively, who's one of the people in political science who really thinks about what we're doing and how we're doing it. A theory takes a set of similar things that happen and finds a common pattern among them that allows us to treat each of these different occurrences as a repeated example of the same thing. So there's that word pattern again that we talked about on Monday. Pattern that allows us to treat different occurrences not as individual, completely particular, one-time isolated events, but rather as repeated examples of the same thing. And if you're looking for a difference between history as an academic discipline, and political science, this is a pretty good place to look. In history, each individual historical event is explored for the fullness of its individuality. And sometimes patterns, historians look for patterns and so on. So it's not an absolutely hard and fast difference. But historians have a tendency to see each event as being unique and complete in itself. Whereas political scientists are always trying to transcend the uniqueness of historical events and find the patterns across historical events to see to what extent we can understand different historical events as somehow fundamentally similar or the same and repeating themselves. So in both cases, there's the potential to overstate, right? There's the potential to think of history as, there's no patterns in history, and that's not very helpful. But the vice that political scientists suffer from most often is a tendency to oversimplify historical events and to see patterns that don't actually exist. Okay, finally, Friedberg calls theory a paradigm that makes claims about the importance of a particular causal mechanism or set of similarly aligned causal forces. And this brings in, again, the idea of explanation, right? That what we're doing in political science is we're trying to explain things by looking at cause and effect. So these repeated patterns that Shively has us paying attention to are then further linked to causal mechanisms. So why do we have this pattern? Why do we see these things coming together again and again and again? So theory in political science is the construction of explanations based on causal mechanisms and patterns of findings across different contexts, different political systems, whether that be over time, across space, in different countries, etc. Empirical theory is predominant in two of our subfields, American politics and comparative politics. So normative theory is what we at Davidson call political theory. So courses by uh, various professors at Davidson teach political theory, but the ones in the department who teach the most are Professors Shaw and Arnsdorf. Then the empirical work is predominantly covered in American politics courses, Dr. Roberts and Dr. Sellers, Dr. Bottery and O'Gene, and comparative politics. So Professor Menkhaus, Crandall, Tseka, Rigger, we're the comparativists. Milligan, Alexander as well. The last of the subfields in political science is international relations. And international relations relies on a combination of empirical studies and what we call positive theory. So one more type of theory in political science, positive theory. Positive theory is more like formal logic than like natural science. So in other words, whereas the empirical theorists go out and collect information, observations from the human world and try to draw theoretical conclusions about them, positive theorists begin with certain assumptions or stipulations about politics and build their theories through a process of logical expansion or logical elaboration to reach conclusions. So here's Shively's definition of positive theory. Positive theorists posit certain facts about politics, but in contrast to normative philosophers, they posit facts as empirical conditions rather than the foundation for moral arguments. So they say these things must be true. Assuming these things are true, then the following follow. They distinctively operate by deriving further implications of the positive conditions by precise logical and mathematical operations, right? So if these things are true, then the following must also be true. Their concern is to take the posited facts or assumptions and derive theories from them. Their end goal is to develop reasonably broad and general theories based on a small number of agreed upon assumptions. So positive theory provides insights by logical argument, not by a direct examination of political facts. And the examples of positive theory that your book talks about, about which you are most likely to have had some awareness in the past, are rational choice and game theory. Both of these are examples of positive theory. We start with certain assumptions about human behavior, and we can use mathematical and logical elaboration to develop them further. Another example of positive theory in many cases is realist theory in international relations. So this is comparative politics, comparative global politics, not international relations or American politics or political theory. So mainly what we're talking about in this class is an empirical subfield in which researchers are trying to describe political systems and processes at a level of detail and accuracy that allows them to do two things. Accurate description that will allow for categorization or analysis, that is breaking down and identifying the key traits and attributes of political systems so that we can recognize these patterns.